All right. I think we should be live now, guys.
I think we're live. Hey,
Huzzah. Just up front for everyone who is joining us, we cannot see your comments. The way that we're making this happen with this lovely split screen means that we cannot get any live feedback. So while we are so excited that you're here joining us, we can't see you, unfortunately. So we're with you in spirit, but not in actively answering your questions. So we're all Mayhem authors, and that's exciting. And I figure we'll introduce ourselves to start with. Does that work with you guys?
Works for me.
sounds good.
So I'm Elise Kova. I wrote Dragon Cursed, and it's a book about dragons and curses, in fact.
I can go next. I'm Jess Lourey. The Verdant Cage is a YA dystopian thriller. It comes out Tuesday, and I am very excited to share it with everyone.
I'm Shannon J. Spann, and my book is A Stage Set for Villains, which is a Greek mythology-inspired dark fantasy that takes the cutthroat world of theater and makes it literally cutthroat.
Nice.
I love both of your covers, by the way. Obsessed with both of them.
Shout out to our cover design team, though, because they did a fabulous job.
Like no misses. No, and the edges too. Can we just?
That's really pretty. I love the edges.
Yeah, the art team at Mayhem is unparalleled.
For real. So I know usually this is the point where an author would introduce themselves and then launch into telling people about their book. But I thought it might be fun, since we're going to really kind of chat about our books in depth with each other. I thought it might be fun to start with by describing our book badly. So basically the worst description that you can give of what your book is about that might answer no one's questions. And we'll get into that in a little bit as we talk about them more.
I love it.
Okay, yeah, I'll go first. Teen girl living behind an impenetrable wall is forced to move in with a boy who ruined her life and decides the only response is to burn down the whole system.
Honestly, understandable.
Right?
I mean, also, I wouldn't say that was bad. I feel like I'm already like, all right, I'm locked in. Tell me more.
You can blame her.
Very kind.
Shannon, do you want to go next?
I can go next. Yeah. So one fun fact about my book is I have the coolest and funniest readers ever. And one of them sent me their description of how they would describe it badly. So this description comes from @LittleGremlinLibrary, which you should absolutely follow because she's
Fabulous
hilarious.
name.
But she helped me out with this one. So non-theater girl goes to extreme theater camp to find new meaning in life and instead falls in love with toxic high tenor, and gets wrapped up in a weird paradigm shift production of Phantom of the Opera. There's no Phantom of the Opera, by the way, in this book. And is possibly inducted into an immortal cult. There's romance and a fight to the death that gives new meaning to the cutthroat audition.
Nice
Love
job.
that.
Yeah.
Also, okay, I'm going to tangent. I'm already tangenting. I'm sorry, everyone. But
Love
Shannon, just because you mentioned, and I know you're also a theater fan, have you seen the videos? And I don't know if you're a theater fan too. Have you seen the videos coming out of Australia and the outdoor production they're doing of Phantom of the Opera?
No.
Look it up. It's so cool looking.
I have to know more.
The cast looks incredible. They have like real fireworks during Masquerade going off. Really cool. Anyway,
not me booking a flight to Australia.
I know. I was literally like, I'm like, how long is that? And then I look at the flights from Florida to Australia and I'm like, oh, literally like 28 hours of travel for me.
Oh Lord.
Worth it? Maybe. Okay, so Dragon Curse described badly. A city has decided that an 18-year-old girl is the chosen one. She is fairly certain she is not in fact the chosen one and is instead in fact cursed, and goes into the worst summer camp ever with all of the other 18-year-olds, where it is sponsored by the local church, and either everyone survives to hunt dragons or dies because they're cursed.
That is a bad summer camp. But it sounds like a fantastic book.
And a mandatory summer camp at that.
No, pass.
Rude.
While we're on the subject of dragons, Elise, you've written dragons before, but not the classic kind like we see in Dragon Curse. So are you excited to share this vision of dragons with readers?
Yeah, I first wrote dragons when I was writing my Loom saga, which was almost 10 years ago at this point. And that was like a gas lamp fantasy where I wanted to reimagine dragons. But I always loved the idea of doing a more classic dragon, like you see in Dragon Curse. And for me, that was there are a lot of like friendly, wizened, chatty dragons that exist out there, but I I feel like a lot of the dragons that I am familiar with are the more fearsome kind, the
Yeah.
Smaugs of the world,
Yeah.
the Placidusacs a la Elden Ring, or the CR15 dragons that I bring up with my D&D party. So like that was the dragons that I was really excited to put into Dragon Cursed for sure.
Yeah.
Which I mean, as we're talking about doing like homework on each other a bit, because that was a deep cut from my backlist. You also just have a huge backlist. You've written 30 books across crime and mystery and thrillers. So what like unlocked this urge for you to go into a YA dystopian thriller?
Yeah, thank you. Well, so I read YA widely. Like it's one of my favorite genres. I think some of the best writing these days is coming out of YA. But in my thrillers, in my crime fiction, I write usually about crimes in systems, like in a family, in a town, in an institution. And I wanted to write about what if the whole system itself is the crime? And it felt very timely because I started to envision what it would feel like to be a girl trapped in this system where everybody tells you this is how it is. It can't get any better. This is how it is. So make the best of it. And instead of doing that, she starts to ask questions like, who really is in charge? Is fear being manufactured to keep us in line? What's our responsibility to other members of the community? So it felt very timely. So I got to use my favorite parts from writing thrillers, but also I got to put it in the YA world, which was for me very exciting.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I love that dystopian's coming back, by the way. Just while we're on the subject, I feel like it's making a big comeback in 2026. Like there were whispers in 2025, and now we're starting to see it like really burst back onto the scene, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, well, and I think Mayhem is doing a good job sort of leading the charge with Elise, your book is dystopian.
Right?
Yeah. Dragon Curse, I definitely think falls under fantasy dystopian. And I would say a stage set for villains is also I don't know if you'd call it true dystopian, but it definitely has for me, like when I read it, some of those edges of like everything that glitters isn't gold, if you'll excuse the pun.
That's funny. No, actually, so I never thought of it as dystopian, but I've had enough readers call it dystopian fantasy that I'm like, I'm one to listen and learn. So I'm like, yeah, I think there is like a dystopian edge to it. I think especially as you learn more about the world and you start to understand like a lot of their technology was lost when the players showed up and destroyed everything they didn't like. And it does give this like, oh, maybe the world was a little different before this really catastrophic thing happened. And it has like a little bit of a dystopian edge. But I feel like between all of the new dystopian books, and I think there's a new Hunger Games movie coming out later this year, which I'm so ready for. I don't know about you guys. And then Stormbreaker in May, which is also a Mayhem book, is, I believe, dystopian fantasy, right? I'm really excited about that one.
Why do you guys think dystopian is coming back? Like, I mean, no wrong answers to that one. Just like from your perspectives, what do you think?
I think for me, it's like, do you know what homeopathy is? Where you take a little bit of something that's toxic and your body starts to create a response to it. So when you actually encounter it in the wild, you're better able to fight it. I think dystopian fiction is that. The world feels very dangerous these days. And so this is a stage where we can play it out and figure out what justice looks like, how to find our found family, and build something better in dangerous times. So I think it's a little bit of the medicine that people need to make sense of a world that feels very upside down these days.
That's so poetic, Jess. I really like that answer.
I agree. I feel like sometimes too, at least for me, so this could be projecting just my personal feelings, but sometimes when I read a dystopian, it's like, well, at least we're not in games to the death. Like at least we're not there.
Yeah.
So it's like there's almost like a catharsis of like, okay, how do we both, it's not that bad, but how do we make sure it doesn't get that bad? That I feel like dystopians sort of have that roadmap of, everyone likes to point at the Handmaid's Tale, which is a classic dystopian as well, of like how do we not become that? Like, what was the things that led to that? But Shannon, I did want to go back to, you mentioned when you were talking about it, the playhouse and after the players appeared and all of that. And one of the things that I know I loved when reading your book was like the playhouse itself. It's so specific and vivid and rich. Like the moment you enter, you feel like you're almost entering into another world within a world. Where, yeah, of course, like you did great. Was it inspired by a real theater? Like where did you, and I guess this might get at the core of the inspiration for your book in general, but like where did that come from, that setting?
I don't think the Playhouse was inspired by any particular theater. I mean, I think we all fell in love with like the Paris Opera House that's featured in Phantom of the Opera, which I keep saying Phantom of the Opera. There's nothing to do with Phantom of the Opera with this book. I think I spent half my time on social media like, this is not a Phantom of the Opera retelling, just so everyone knows. But I think it's more so, it combines a couple of things that I really loved. So like I loved Alice in Wonderland growing up, and something I love about Alice in Wonderland is the setting that feels alive and like its own character. Like Wonderland is changing around Alice quite frequently, and I was always very fascinated with that. And also with the idea of a setting almost being a character in and of itself. So the Playhouse kind of captures less so a specific place and more a specific feeling. I think whether you've been in theater or you've been to a show or whatever it is, all theaters kind of feel haunted to me. And all theaters carry this like very specific kind of ethereal feeling, magic, at least to me, especially as a theater kid. Like if you've ever been behind the curtain before a show with your cast, like there is sort of like a magic in the air that's hard to put a name to. But I think it hit me at one point that I was very curious about where that magic came from and like why, like if every theater is haunted, who's haunting it and why does it feel that way? So I started going
Ghost lamps exist for a reason.
Yeah. Trying to unravel what might have led to that, to give answers for myself. And I had a lot of fun creating the lore around it, but the Playhouse in and of itself is like, it's very much a place I can wander around in my head at this point because I spent so much time in the Playhouse writing about it. At some point, my publisher asked me if there was like a blueprint in existence for the Playhouse. I was like, no, there's not. And I don't think I could draw one, but I sat down in the afternoon. I was like, actually, I know where everything is because I've been in it in my head for so long. So the Playhouse is very dear to my heart, but not inspired by any particular building.
And I feel like, setting as character, I feel like that could also apply to the Verdant Cage, especially because you do spend so much time just in that one location, basically.
Yeah, like you, my book has a walled community. And so in the Verdant Cage, it is an impenetrable wall that they've been behind for 120 years. And they have this pre-industrial society. So I'm coming to you from Minnesota, and I've written 30 books, but I think all of them have a nod to Little House on the Prairie in them. Which is a little bit embarrassing, but I think it's true, even my darkest books. And so in the Verdant Cage, they're living in sort of a Little House on the Prairie world where there are 38 roles that you were born into, baker, candle maker, apothecary, guardian, record keeper, all the things you need to keep a society going inside a wall. And the wall does become a character, it becomes a central force. And like Shannon, I'm not one of those writers who talks to the characters. Like I know when I'm here and I know when I'm creating a world, but I can see what it looks like inside the wall. I can feel the cobblestones underneath my feet when I'm going from the apothecary cottage to the chemist cottage, So you create this world, and it's one of my favorite parts of writing. And so Elise, in your walled community, do you feel the same way?
I very much do, but I will say I feel like for me, because I live so much through the characters, which I'm sure you guys do too. Asola, the main character of Dragon Cursed, she was deemed this sort of chosen one by the Creed when she slayed a dragon with a magic that wasn't supposed to exist and thought gone for centuries. And when she was 12. And so because of that, the Creed said, oh, well, you must be our chosen hero returned to us. Like you're the reincarnation of him. And so after that, her life was really shut down on the places she could go and the things she could do and the things she could see, because, you know, when you're the chosen one and the figurehead in some ways of the organization that is both a religion and the people running the city, you know, they kind of want to keep tabs on you and what you're eating and doing and seeing and all of that. So I feel like there's a lot of Vanguard that I sort of have these vague notions of what they are, and but I don't have them as clear in my head because Asola has never been there. Like, she's never been to those areas of Vanguard or spent a lot of time in them. But one of the things that I really loved about writing like a walled city in an compressed environment is like that pressure cooker element of that feeling of like everyone gets in everyone's business a little bit. Everyone kind of knows what's going on. And I feel like the Verdant Cage could perhaps be a similar thing with, like, especially writing a thriller where you have, you know, potentially some big twists or some big reveals. Like, is there any, without spoilers, is there anything that you're really excited for readers to get to when this book is out?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the Verdant Cage has 3 big twists in it, and as a thriller writer, twists are the bread and butter of my books very often, but they can't be cheap twists, right? You have to earn them. They have to be something that you weave in. So if a reader really looks, they can see them. With the Verdant Cage, though, I set myself a challenge of doing the trifecta of twists. And so one's a heart twist, one's a setting twist, and one is a villain twist.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, thank you. I am nerdily proud of being able to pull it off, because they have to make the story go forward. They have to deepen the characters. They can't just be cheap shots. So I am so excited for readers to get halfway through the book and think they know what the mystery is, and then discover that there's a whole other mystery that I've been hiding beneath the surface the whole time. I did writing dystopian, and Elise, maybe you experienced this too. Writing dystopian, you mentioned pressure cookers, right? So Dragon Cursed is set in the last human city standing, right? So that's already a pressure cooker. How do you write a world that feels like it's already on the edge of collapse without making it hopeless?
Oh man, I mean, it's hard because I think what I always come back to is, as corny as it sounds, like that old expression, hope springs eternal.
Yeah.
Because I think about just in our history of humanity in the real world, and there are those moments that you hear about where you hear about people that are in circumstances, or you know, you're reading about them and you're just like, how did you get up in the
Yeah.
morning? Like how did I like, you can't even fathom it, because they're living through something that is so unbearably horrible that you just think, I wouldn't even get out of bed in that moment. And yet people do, and we always have as humans. And I think that there is something about the indomitable nature of the human spirit that is just, and that's a hallmark, I feel like, of dystopian is that sort of spirit coming to life, of being like, I don't just revolt against the system. I revolt against this notion that I am helpless to do anything about these horrible circumstances.
Well said. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Shifting gears though,
Wait,
I would be
before we do,
oh, sorry.
can
Yeah,
I come
please.
back? I wanted to ask Jess more about her trifecta of twists thing,
Oh
especially if
yeah.
readers don't understand what that means. I'd love to hear you talk on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I know, and it's so hard because the book has such big twists that it makes it difficult to talk about it, which is a
Or
cop
if you can like give an example that you are able to talk about without giving away your own twist, because I don't want to accidentally lure you into spoilers.
Yeah, right. You're trapping me, Shannon. I see what you're doing.
We're trying to get the goods before the book is out.
Before Tuesday. I see what you're doing. Well, so the heart twist, and I actually think both of you do this exceptionally well. The heart twist is you break your reader's heart and then you sew it back together, right? You take something from them that you've made them really, really value, and then you sew it back together. The villain twist is, do you know, the villain thinks they're the hero of the story, right? The villain always thinks they're the good guy. They really do. And so to write a villain that thinks they're the good guy and making them complex, and then this is a hard one to talk about, but then twisting who you actually think the villain is was that second one. And then the third one was just, in my book, the world ends up not being what you think it is. So they think they're behind this wall to protect them, but they discover they might be the thing that needs protecting is inside the wall with them the whole time. So it's that twist was kind of built in because the setting is not what you think it is.
Talk about a pressure cooker.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I love writing suspense. It's so captivating to me as a writer. And I'm sure the two of you feel the same way, where if you can trick yourself, it makes the writing go so much faster.
Did you find yourself bringing like a lot of your previous experience in writing mysteries and thrillers and things to writing your dystopian?
I did. And I was so happy when I got assigned Madison Pelletier as my editor, because she was all on board with me bringing the thriller aspect in. I did want to write dystopia, but she said, let's make it a thriller too. So I got to turn it up to 11.
Love it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have to say, I wildly admire like thriller writers, just because the pacing that thriller writers have to have, like geeking out on the writing side for a second, but like the pacing that thrillers keep is insane. And I say this as an epic fantasy girly through and through, where I'm just like, I can plod along and give a description from time to time and linger. And I feel like thriller writers and books are like the F1 of the literary world, where they're just like, even when we stop, we're still going fast.
Yeah. I feel that way about romance writers, because I think romance is the hardest thing to write well. I studied it so hard for this book, and I still needed a lot of help, because it's just creating that compelling human connection. I can make the story move, but when you have to slow down and write two people falling in love, I'm like, oh, this is so hard. And you two do that exceptionally well. I'm jealous.
You're kind of writing like two books at the same time when you are like bringing the romance in as much as the, whatever your main plot line is.
Yeah.
So I think the balance of it all.
So to that end, I just have a curiosity question about you guys as writers, because I know I do this. So there are times that I'll be writing and I'm just, to that point, I won't be in the headspace to write romance. And I don't just mean, sometimes that's the more romantic, tensiony, spicier scenes, of which I will say in Dragon Curse there are none. That references a little bit of my other work more. But sometimes it's also, just the romantic beats, because you have to be in such, like, you are effectively writing a different story. You said that really well, Shannon. So there have been times where when I'm writing, I'll just put brackets and I'll be like, really romantic kissy scene here, and then I'll just move on to the next chapter, or like to the next beat after that scene, and I'll just go in and fill it in later. I don't know if you guys do that at all while drafting or anything like that, because I've done it with fight scenes too. The reverse, where my head is like, I don't want to block a fight scene right now. Epic battle. Next scene.
Is future Elise ever like really annoyed with past Elise when you're going back?
I'm only annoyed when I'm going back, because I try not. I admit I've submitted books to editors before with that in there, where I'm like, I promise this will be a really good fight scene by the time we get to copy edits. But just use your imagination for now. But I try to get them all filled out, and I only am annoyed with myself when I suddenly go, I have to write 7 fight scenes in a row. And I'm just like, I'm blasted like 2 steps from hell, and, all Coheed and Cambria, and just like, all right, let's go. We're battling today, friends.
Okay. So now I have a question. Do the two of you use music in the mood that you need to be in to write scenes? You obviously do, Elise, for your battle scenes.
Yeah, I do in general. I actually have a general production playlist, is what I call it, where I have like it's like a 20-hour long playlist, but it's like I have movements of like, this is my romantic movement, and I'll start at this point of the playlist and just let it play through, or like, these are my fighting songs, or these are my like, and I have wildly obscure songs like, this is when the villain is talking about his plan, and that's like the song that I put on. And then I also have songs for specific characters and settings and places. So I use a lot of music. What about you, Shannon?
I tend to write with like, I'm a very weird person who like listens to the same song over and over again for hours while I'm writing. And so my playlist, when all is said and done, is like 8 songs, but I listen to them for like hundreds of hours. And to your other question, Elise, I don't think I do the like brackets fight scene here, but it's because I know my little ADHD self. And the thing is, I won't go back and do my homework on like the thing that I skipped over. So I kind of have to force myself, even if it's really badly written at the time, to like do it, and then come back. And then I think the important caveat is like none of my first drafts look anything like my second drafts. So everything gets overhauled anyways. How about you, Jess?
I mentioned I'm type A, and so I have to start at the beginning and go through to the end. So I do just write really crappy fight scenes. For fight and romance for me are equally hard. And sometimes when I want something funny, I'll put in just like a bad knock joke that I can come back in later and fix it, because it's hard to be funny on the spot.
I actually tell reader, I don't think writers are shocked, but a lot of times readers are shocked when I say that romance scenes and fight scenes are almost identical to write. That the emotional beats are just different because you're focused on how do they feel when this is happening? What are they feeling sensationally in their body? What is the blocking? All of that is wildly important in both of them.
Agreed.
Actually, while we're on the topic, I know we're all completely off script right now about like what we're supposed to be asking, but this is more interesting. What's easiest for you to write and what's hardest for you to write?
I love writing dialogue. I could write dialogue all day long. For me, setting description is hard to write. And Elise, for you with fantasy, like you have to write some really compelling setting description. So for you, is it the opposite? Do you enjoy writing that?
I really do enjoy writing that. And sometimes it is easy with fantasy though to go too far into it, and so I think it's a balance that really is sometimes hard to find because it is an otherworldly setting. So you can't just say like Manhattan, Times Square, and people have like a vague notion of what that is. And you know, I think that you have to give readers something, but at the same time you don't want to go too much, because I think one, you don't want to go Tolkien with it, as much as I do love Tolkien, where it's just like, okay, now we're going to have 5 chapters describing a tree. But on the other side, you don't want to give so little that the reader is going, wait, I have no idea. I have no sense of place or anything like that. So I do love settings, and I have to reel myself in. And part of that is because I love environmental storytelling. That's one of my favorite forms of storytelling. And so sometimes I will tangent into I'm describing a fresco or a relief sculpture on a wall that, you know, my editor will be like, why did you spend 2 paragraphs on this? Does it ever come up again? And I'm like, because if you compare that with what you see here, readers will realize that this building is newer than that building, so they can juxtapose how the relief has changed in the depictions, and therefore understand that the mythology of the world has changed in this span of time. And my editors are like, Elise, please stop. Please stop.
We're all playing checkers and Elise is playing chess.
Well, and the problem is though, is that 90% of the time though, my editors are right of like, but is this important? Yeah. Is it important? And I'm like, okay, how do I figure out what is important and keep that in the fewest amount of words possible?
Which is the trick of writing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I always say editing is, you are done editing not when you cannot add any more words. It's when you cannot take away anything more.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
Which, okay, so I'm really curious about that. I love and hate editing. I think books are made in editing. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but like I'm like, I value it, but I hate being in it sometimes, most of the time. I always have to cut things. Did you guys have to cut anything from either of your books, either a line or a scene that, you know, there was debate over if it was the right thing to do, or like even if you knew it was, you were still like, oh, that's a bummer. Like, was there anything like that for you guys?
Shannon, you go first.
Yeah, I agree with you that editing is kind of where books really get beaten into shape. I don't know about you, but I'm a terrible drafter and pretty quick at editing, and I'm usually pretty merciless with editing. I don't normally have a whole lot super hard time cutting things. There was one major change done to Stage Set for Villains that I don't think I can talk in detail about it, but the original book had a completely different ending that we ended up cutting and rewriting entirely. So that was kind of a result of other changes that have been made to the book as well, where sometimes you make a lot of other changes and then you get to the end and maybe the ending is a little bit mismatchy with like the first part now. So I think ultimately it was the right call. It's just like they both exist for me and I love both of them now.
Would you ever release it as like a bonus scene or anything?
That was my question.
I think if I'm able to, I probably would. So I do think like some readers would really hate what happened. So like I think like we ended up with the right ending for the book, but I think the original one was quite controversial.
Missed opportunity to have a choose your own adventure right at like the last chapter.
Right?
Like, should she do this? Turn to chapter this. Should she do that? Turn
We're
to
gonna
chapter
do that at some point. It's gonna be like the Clue movie where like you have 5 different endings and you get to choose which one.
Speaking of, Shannon, is a stage set for villains, is it going to be a duology or a trilogy, or is it a standalone?
A Stage Set for Villains is a standalone. It's set in a much bigger universe, but the world that we see in A Stage Set for Villains was always meant to be pretty self-contained.
Nice. Nice. I like that. I love a standalone.
Is Verdant Cage is not standalone, right?
It is not. It's the first in a trilogy. The second is called The Violet Maze, and it picks up right where the Verdant Cage leaves off. And it in the Verdant Cage, I hopefully solve every mystery I throw at you, but there's a new mystery introduced at the end of the Verdant Cage that I think will get a gasp from readers. And so the Violet Maze picks up right where that left off.
I'm
Nice.
sure readers will be very happy because I know as someone who has ended books on like those last minute reveals, readers are like, what? Wait, what?
Right.
And
And then
now
how
baby
long till it
here.
comes out? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Elise's Dragon Cursed is part of it.
Duology.
Duology. Okay.
Yeah, Dragon Curse is a duology. And I'm pretty sure that it will remain a duology. Just because
I love duology.
It's my first ever duology actually that I've written. So I'm excited. I'm excited to try it on. I either feel like it's gonna go great or I'm gonna have a book that's, you know, this long for book 1, and then book 2 is like this long, and everyone's going, should this have been a trilogy? And I'm like, shh.
I want to hear from both of you too. Like, what was, the kill your darlings of it all? What was something that you had to cut from your books?
You know, when I first started writing The Verdant Cage, the first draft of it was called Chosen. That was the original working title. And I sent 50 pages in, and that draft was fantasy. It was dystopian fantasy with
so very different.
The plot was the same, but the creatures and the people that populated it were very, very different. And so that went out the window, and I'm glad it did. I'm glad it ended up being pure dystopian because that's what I love to read. The second title of the book, though, it used to be called A Whisper of Poison as well, and it had
I like that.
I know, it was such a great title and a great cover they came up with for it, but I'm just so happy with where we ended up for the title. Yeah. That cover's beautiful. So no complaints.
For Dragon Cursed, I'm gonna try and do this without spoilers. In the second half of the book, there was originally a much bigger subplot that involved Asola's mother, because one of the things that I really endeavored to do in Dragon Cursed is I have been guilty of the YA trope, if you will, of dead parents of like the, you know, every YA protagonist is like an orphan in some capacity. and because, you know, if the parents are around, they would never stand for all of these shenanigans that the kids get into. And so I was like, you know, I want to write a book where, at least at the start, both of her parents are alive and she has an overall positive but complicated, as many of us do when we're 18 and we're finding our way in the world and we're getting our first real sense of autonomy and independence and adulthood. You know, she has an overall good but complicated relationship with her parents, and she has this, you know, unconventional, which feels weird to say because it's more conventional than ever, stuff like this, but a blended family. She has a stepmom, and the stepmom is not a caricature of the evil stepmom. She has a good relationship with her stepmom and that sort of thing. So the parents, you know, kind of play this active role, at least at the onset, and then, you know, a little bit behind the scenes as the book goes on, because Asola is sequestered into the tribunal where you can't go in and you can't do anything. And so in the second half of the book, there was originally this bigger subplot involving Asola's mother, and there was this whole scene where Asola's mother is brought to trial. And I won't say why. I won't give any details of where, again, because spoilers. But you know, she's brought to this trial, and Asola actually is permitted to leave the tribunal and is taken to the trial because it's that serious. And, you know, it's this whole moment of, you know, with her father leading into it, and then the trial that happens, and the vicar, who's this wicked character, is there, and all of that got cut from the second half. That whole subplot that was leading into the lead up to the trial and the trial happening and all of that got cut. And it was hard at first, just because I was like, that's like 20,000 words. But you know, like when you combine all the scenes together in the second half of the book, and also then I would like, then I'm immediately panicking of like, what is the second half of the book going to be empty now? Like, what are we doing here? But you know, I think it ended up being a really smart and a really good decision, because it was taking a little too much off of Sola and kind of making her mom this driving force. And of course, Sola cares for her mom, and she would want to be involved in all that, but it was making it less of a Sola's story and changing the dynamic of the story by bringing it a little bit less focus on the tribunal and everything that, you know, they were enduring in there, when it shouldn't be. Yeah. And so the only scene that I really fought for was, there was the scene leading into it with her father. And I've already started rambling too long, because I do that. I apologize. But I, you know, you have those scenes that you're like, I don't want to cut this one thing. Let me find a way to bring the spirit of this scene in. And I did. And that was good. So
is the whole trial lead up that you cut, is it going to be something readers can get their hands on?
You know, I've thought about just doing the trial chapter, because there was a whole chapter with the trial. I've thought about if I'm able to, doing that as like a special bonus scene for maybe my Patreon or my newsletter. Just as like, this is an alternate universe that never happened.
Yeah, it's part of writing, isn't it? When you find a good editor, it's priceless, because they can see things in the story from the aerial view that you can't when you're down in the weeds. But you also have to know what scenes to fight for and what scenes to let go, because no editor is perfect.
Well, and I think that's so important, that I see from a lot of people who work with an editor for the first time, is like not knowing when to push back. Yeah. And I say that as someone who 95+% of the time, if my editor is like, I think this should be cut, I think this should be changed, I'm like, I see it, I get you.
Same.
I'm right there with you. Yes, thank you. But there is that 5% that you go, oh, but this is important, I can change it. Tell me what specifically isn't working, we'll fix that. But this needs to stay for one reason or another.
Yeah,
I think it's I want to say it's Seba Tahir who talks about often about like the note behind the note. So like, maybe if the note isn't quite working for you, what is the sentiment behind it that's like bringing that note up, and figuring out how to address whatever that core thing is.
Oh, I love that. And Saba Tahir is one of my favorite writers. Oh my goodness, her book's good.
She is amazing.
It's amazing.
I would love to know a little bit more about you guys as people, if that's okay. I mean, I do know a little bit, but for the sake of those listening who might not have that privilege,
are we going to get personal?
Get personal. No, but I want to know, like, when did you get started, not just like as an author, but as a storyteller? Like, what drew you, maybe when you were a kid, or like before you even knew you wanted to be a writer? And you can tie that into how you became a writer too, of course. But you know, where did this love of story come from for you guys?
You know, both my parents were teachers, which means I was raised very poor, but we always had a lot of books in the house. And so I grew up always wanting to be a writer, right? I always saw people with their faces in books. And I thought part of it was I was a kid, and I thought that's how I get attention. Like, if I can write the books, then people will be forced to read my stories. But I grew up in rural Minnesota. So, you know, I had no idea how to become a writer. Went to college for my master's thesis. My advisor said, do you want to write a novel for your thesis? And I thought, what a great opportunity. I will do that. I wrote a book. I thought it was great. It was terrible. It was so bad, you guys. My first book was so bad that when I finally got published, I went back to the library, the college library, and stole the book so nobody could see how bad I used to be. I returned it.
Amazing.
I returned it because guilt is my primary emotion, but I did steal that book for a while. And you know, I probably would have been fine being a teacher, which I was a college professor for 22 years. But then tragedy struck, and I have a TEDx talk about this. But my husband took his life on 9/11, and it was very unexpected. Obviously, the whole world was upside down, inside out. And then within that, my whole world was turned upside down. And I was pregnant at the time. My son he's fine. He's 24 years old. He's wonderful. He's healthy. But they didn't think he was going to make it because I ended up in the hospital because of stress. And an ER doctor whose name has been lost to time, came to my bedside and he said, physically, you're going to be fine. He said, this is a mental game. If you want your baby to be born healthy, you need to see a therapist and you need to write. And that got me back on the track of writing. And so the first book I wrote from that was a humorous mystery, and I got it published. And 30 books later, for me, writing is still very profoundly healing. I put into every book some Easter eggs, something I need to work on, something I need to figure out how to do better as a human, something that's important to me. And so I think writing is a gift. I mean, really, in many ways, it saved me.
Jess, your story is so inspiring. Wow, that's really
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think we all have inspiring stories. How did the two of you come into writing? Or when did you first know you wanted to be a writer?
Elise, I'm very curious about yours because you've written like a gazillion books, yes?
Yeah, I'm around 30, 32, 33 myself, somewhere around there. I say I accidentally became, like, it makes sense when I look back, but I feel like I accidentally became a writer because, you know, I started writing at a young age, and stories have always been a big part of my life. And funny, my mom was a teacher as well, Jess, so I can relate to that component of it deeply. But I never envisioned myself as a writer. And then I was living abroad, and I got really into IP Thor, the movie, and I wanted to you are a hard act to follow, just by the way. I'm like, this is so lame by comparison.
No, I love Thor.
I was like, do I want to write a fan fiction, or do I want to write about a painfully attractive dark-haired man? And that's what I did. And I feel like for a year I was in a fever dream. I wrote 1 million words in a year, the entire Air Awakened series. And that became and then I was like, I have five books, and I had a couple thousand people following me on Fiction Press because I had been posting a chapter a day for a year. And I was like, I feel like I should do something with this. So I queried 111 agents. They all rejected me. I decided to indie publish Air Awakens in 2015. And I mean, the 5th book in that series hit USA Today. And so the rest is history, as they say. But it really felt like one of those things that when I started really publishing Air Awakens, it felt like that moment in my life that I looked back and I went, oh, all of this makes sense. All of this random bucket of skills and experiences that I've just been putting things into my whole life, I found the thing for me to do that allows me to pull out of that bucket and then apply them.
I love that.
Elise, it boggles my mind that you queried that many agents, and you said, how many readers did you say you had on fiction.net?
I went back and I looked recently. I think the 5th book, I was somewhere around 6 to 10,000 followers or something like that.
That is wild to me that, like, you had a built-in readership and an agent wasn't like, wow, this is a gold mine. Like,
you know, to be fair, my first draft sucked and my query letter was terrible. But all's well that ends well.
You ended up with the right agent in the end.
I did. I ended up with the right agent in the end, and honestly, I wouldn't change anything. I love being a hybrid author, and I love that I got my start in indie publishing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Shannon?
Mine is so much more lame than both of yours, but the thing I remember most is that I was like incredibly secretive about writing. Like, I was a teenager and I'd have like these ideas for stories, but I was kind of the inverse of just like excited for people to read. And I was more like, no one is allowed to read this or even know it exists ever. So I would wait until like the sun had gone down and everyone had gone to bed, and then creep into the living room with my laptop and then write all night. But I remember like wanting to keep it to myself like forever and not planning to ever share the stories that I wrote with anybody. If they were serious was the thing. Like, if they were like a serious thing that I was really proud of. But when it came to like little comedy sketch type things, I was all over the place. And that was kind of the thing I was known for. So I was in a theater group, and we had so much, to everyone's shock and surprise, I was in a theater group. we had all of this downtime during rehearsals. And so I started sketching out like this short story series that cast everyone as a character in this like small town comedy. And it was like something where I would write like a new chapter, and I wasn't private about this at all because it wasn't serious. It was like a silly like comedy thing. But I would like make a new installment of this little short story series each time I went into rehearsal, and it turned into a thing where like everyone in the cast would be like, Shannon, is there a new chapter? Is there a new chapter? And they'd pass like the notebook that I brought in around, and everyone would like read the new installment or like come up with theories about what was happening next. And like I wasn't planning ahead, I was just writing. But it was so fun. And I remember that was the first time where I was like, oh, like sharing your stuff can be kind of a positive thing too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my very silly start into writing.
I don't know. I think that's not uncommon, right? It is scary to share your writing initially, no matter serious or funny. I mean, we open ourselves up to all sorts of criticism for something that initially is very personal.
I feel like that's one of the hardest parts, is to take that plunge of I'm going to show this to someone, whether that's an editor or an agent or, you know, just a trusted friend. Yeah, for sure. We are just about at time, friends. I feel like I could talk to you guys for like another hour at least.
Yeah.
But I feel like we might have some FAQs that we always get asked about our books that maybe we didn't get to in our discussion that we would want to cover. Shannon, would you like to go first? I can go first if you don't want to be on the spot, or Jess, I don't mind, but
why don't you go first?
All right, I'll jump in. So just to reiterate, I'm Elise Kova. This is my book, Dragon Curse. It is out now. Dragon Curse is a duology. The second book will be out hopefully within a year of the first one. I say not having it finished yet. But I do always tell people, I'm like, it isn't real until there's a pre-order and a formal announcement and all of that. So keep an eye out for that. But I am working on the second book. Let's see. I brought up like FAQs, and I don't have a ton of them, but you can find me on TikTok and Instagram. Those are what I'm most active on. I do have a Patreon. I have a newsletter that I send out every month. But if you go to elisekova.com, just my name, I have links to all of my books, information, a quiz that you can take to find out which book you should start with, and all of my newsletters and subscriptions and social media. So just go to my website and poke around for a bit.
Nice. And I guess wrapping us up we're not doing FAQs. We're just doing kind of like about our book real quick.
Well, yeah, all of those were the answers to FAQs I get. Like I get FAQs of like, how long is this? When is the next book out? So I just tried to cover bases.
I love it. So also just a reminder for everyone who's watching us live, if you have been asking us questions, we can't actually see the comments right now, so we're not ignoring you, I promise. But my name is Shannon J. Spann. I'm the author of A Stage Set for Villains, and it's a Greek mythology-inspired dark fantasy about a girl who is desperate to break this curse that is slowly killing her, and in order to do so, she enters this deadly competition that takes place in a magical traveling playhouse, and she strikes a bargain with its lead player. It's a standalone, but the universe it's set in is much bigger than the corner of it that we see, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a different part of that world later on. And I'm trying to think if there's anything in particular I get asked a lot outside of, were you a theater kid? Yes. I get asked a lot if the script tags and the way the dialogue is displayed in the book is intentional and if it holds deeper meaning. And the answer is yes to both.
Oh, a mystery. So my book doesn't come out till Tuesday, so I don't know what the questions are yet. The early reviewers have asked if there's going to be book 2, and so The Verdant Cage is book 1. It comes out Tuesday, April 7th. I'm thrilled for it. The Violet Maze is book 2. It comes out June 1st of next year. And starting Tuesday, I have a nationwide tour, and I'd love for anybody to stop by and see me. The full tour is up on my website, www.jesslowry.com. And at each tour stop, everybody who gets a signed book will get a house card telling them which of 38 roles inside the wall they were assigned, and maybe a little bit other swag, depending on what I have left.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys, and thank you for everyone who joined live, and hopefully we'll see you in our comments on our Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok posts.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Still some awkward silence.
I know.